when you're helping each other, I mean, it really does take a village. When you're helping each other kind of get through and carry on, that really does form the bones, so to speak, of what servant leadership is all about.
Welcome to the EQ Gangster podcast, where you will learn practical tools to grow your mental and emotional health and intelligence to be the best version of yourself, both at work and at home. It is real, raw, and transformational. The journey of emotional growth isn't easy, but it's worth it. I believe in you. This episode is sponsored by Classical Conversations. Since 1997, Classical Conversations has been equipping families like yours with the resources to homeschool with confidence, following a classical curriculum rooted in a Christ-centered worldview alongside other families in a local community. Homeschooling is doable with Classical Conversations. Check out classicalconversations.com/Gibbons for more information. Again, that's classicalconversations.com/Gibbons, Gibbens.
My goodness, I am so excited to chat with you.
Oh my gosh, not nearly as excited as I am to chat with you, Noble. I can guarantee you that. I am telling you, I have been so incredibly impressed. I'll admit, I've been a little bit of an EQ Gangster stalker. So I've been going through and watching videos and listening to some of our amazing classmates, like just absolutely blows my mind, right?
Yes.
And can I just tell you, like the way that you greet everybody, like, Noble, everybody should be able to go into whatever their profession is each day, or even just wake up each morning with the greetings that you give people. You know, you're like, yeah, awesome. It's great to see you. I mean, imagine if we all walked into our place of employment each day and that's the, you know, kind of like Norm from Cheers got that response, right?
That's right.
Anyways,
I'm humbled, Roxanne. Wow, that's amazing. I'm so stoked that you have kind of followed some of the journey, and like you said, some incredible classmates, and also thank you for that encouraging feedback. And I really appreciate that. That means a ton coming from me, Roxanne. That really means a lot. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Noble. Absolutely. And thank you for the gift of all your podcasts. They're fantastic.
Awesome. So, okay. So, oh my goodness. All right. So I saw your bio and I was immediately intimidated. It was like 3 pages long. And I'm like, oh my gosh, Roxanne. I mean, you've always been a machine. All right. Even at West Point, you were a machine. And I'm like, wow, what an amazing career that you have had, Roxanne. I mean, that's tremendous. It's incredible. I'm so stoked. I'm fangirling right now, Roxanne.
No way. You know what? No, well, thank you so much for that. But, deep down, there's still this 17-year-old small town girl from East Texas that still can't believe everything that she's been exposed to. So I've had tremendous blessings in life, and I'm just so grateful for everything I've had the opportunity to do, whether it was being the most improbable of cadets to what I'm doing today. I feel tremendous gratitude.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's great. So for the audience, so Roxanne and I go way back, further than my hairline, and we're actually college classmates. And one of us was high speed, and one of us said a lot of prayers to get through that school. And so, I'm just going to read Roxanne, your bio very briefly so everyone else can kind of appreciate it. And then I'll jump into some questions here. So Roxanne is Executive Vice President and President of ACCO Brands North America, a $1 billion segment of ACCO Brands. No big deal. She has responsibility for 2,000 employees located in 10 offices and 5 manufacturing facilities across the U.S., Canada, and throughout Asia. No big deal. She attended West Point, where she earned a bachelor's degree in engineering and secured 7 academy records on the Army's track and field team. Oh my gosh. In 2000, she earned her Master of Business Administration with honors from Colorado State. Colorado, what? She is currently a board member of the nonprofit organization Feed the Children, where she serves as the chair of the Resource Development Committee. She earned industry recognition in 2019 as a member of Progressive Grocer's Top Women in Grocery, and in 2023 was named OPI's 50 most influential women in the office products industry. What? That's crazy.
I've fooled a lot of people, apparently, Noble.
Roxanne, oh my goodness. So, okay. Oh man. So this always happens, right? I've got 100 questions all at it's like Grand Central Station of my being here. So what, and any question that maybe you don't feel comfortable answering, just tell me, and that's totally fine, right? We can just move along. Not a big deal. So what role did your childhood play in your leader development journey?
Central role to my leadership development journey. It's I grew up, Noble, in a small town in East Texas. Huntington was the name. An amazingly fantastic childhood, but we didn't have a lot of resources. We didn't, to say blue collar was probably generous. 1,700 people, one stoplight and a Dairy Queen. And so everybody knew everybody, you interacted, you engaged, you had empathy for folks. But at the same time, since I didn't have a lot of resources, I also was very dependent upon myself. And so you engage with a lot of different people. They're all kind of your same ilk, so to speak. We were all at the same level. That's one of the things I had to learn how to kind of flex and morph into the people that I'm able to engage with now. Because for the longest time, I didn't feel worthy to engage with people at a certain status or a certain level, but that was, in growing up, that wasn't really much of an issue. But I would say that not having much, having to work incredibly hard, having to reach out to others, to engage, to understand, to be empathetic. You didn't know it when you were young that was something called empathy, but being able to engage with folks was really important. So just working really hard without a lot of resources and engaging a lot of people.
Awesome. That's great. And that's fascinating because I grew up in a small town in Illinois, and I think there's so much, and I've never done research on this, but that would be fascinating to kind of do a study on the core values of small town America versus the core values of a big city. And not that maybe one is better or worse. I just think it's different. I think the culture of small town America is just different than the culture of a big city.
I think it lends itself to servant leadership, which has been always very crucial to my belief system. And, when you're helping each other, I mean, it really does take a village. When you're helping each other kind of get through and carry on, that really does form the bones, so to speak, of what servant leadership is all about.
Love it. That's awesome. When did you begin becoming more self-aware as a person, as a woman, as a leader?
That is a fantastic question. Truthfully, I think it was probably not until a little bit later in life, probably until into my 30s and beyond. And I'll explain. It probably sounds kind of odd. I always just sort of assumed that people did things for the right reason. I grew up in a small town, right? And was relatively sheltered. And so I thought that what you see is what you get. And I would always strive to be myself, but there wasn't, I wasn't good at reading people necessarily, or to understand that what you see is not always what you get. I choose to always believe the positive in people, the optimistic. I mean, how do I look at your optimism and not feel that way, right? But I've always chosen to see that piece, but I never really understood how or why, and never really thought about it, if I'm honest, how or why I did the things that I did. I have always chosen the hardest route to everything, sometimes in spite of myself, right? I mean, whether it is, my choice of undergraduate institutions, whether it's the assignments that I have taken on, but I never understood why. I'm so driven like a moth to a flame for things that are really difficult. So that's why I say my awareness of that really didn't increase until I would say within the last even 10 years, Noble, because I had the wonderful gift of a executive coach who helped me to explore, went deep into this psyche, right? Even deeper than the Center for Enhanced Performance at West Point, right? Went deep into this psyche to figure out kind of why I do what I do. And I began to realize that I just sort of grew up with a chip on my shoulder, right? Not a negative one, but always had a need to prove, always had to show that I could do the difficult things, always had to live up to, something bigger than myself, and have been very, very difficult on myself for that reason. And so when this person explored, well, why have you done that? It all came to, a lot having to do with my upbringing and what I was surrounded with at the time. Again, very, very happy childhood, but it drove in me this desire to do and be more and to do the hard things. And as soon as you tell me it can't be done, that's the surest way to make sure that it is done. As a matter of fact, you know what, Noble, like at one point I second guessed my decision to go to West Point. I was just I was so close to family and friends. And one of my closest friends in high school said, "Oh, Roxanne, you're so close to friends and family. Maybe you'll go for a year, but then you'll come back." And I was like, okay. So I went and graduated, and the rest is history. But it was a gift of an executive coach that helped me to discover this.
That is excellent. So a lot of things that are awesome. So it's awesome that so thank you for your vulnerability and just sharing, hey, you didn't pop out of the womb as this awesome self-aware leader. It's been even more recently. I mean, you've been a great leader for a long time, but more recently your self-awareness has increased. And I love that you even pursued coaching to bring out some of those deeper traits, aspects, qualities, insights about yourself. Why did you make a decision to pursue coaching?
Because I want to make a difference, Noble. Like I tell you about a book that I'm reading, but I do see echoing something that I read in this book that says that leadership is the responsibility to create a better reality. And I want to do that. And I believe it to my soul and in my bones. I want to do and create and fix and optimize. And that starts with me. I have to recognize that it starts with me. And if I'm going to open up the potential in others, I have to be able to learn how to deal with the environment around me, right? And so for me, it's a constant learning journey. I think emotional intelligence requires a combination of three things. One is self-awareness, which we've just talked about. Another is patience, because there is no fast path or shortcut. And another one is discipline, right? Because I could see in leadership and management meetings, I could feel in myself the desire to jump in and say, yeah, but, or to ask questions. And in that moment, I realized, and what I've learned is you just have to listen to understand and ask a lot of questions, but allow the situation to play out in front of you. So that takes a lot of discipline. And then with yourself, it takes a lot of patience, but awareness is just understanding how important it is to the mental well-being and achievement of potential in all of those around you, right?
Love those three qualities that you brought up there about emotional intelligence. The consequences of not having those three are significant and, I would argue almost immediately recognizable and almost, showstoppers, almost instant showstoppers too, when there's a lack of those. What would you say are your strengths and weaknesses?
That is a big question. I would say my strength at this point, from a business perspective, I'm a good listener. And that probably sounds a bit odd for me to lead with that. But I think to truly lead people, you have to be able to listen. You gotta use your ears and your mouth in the proportion, that the good Lord gave them to you, right? You have to listen to understand the point of view of others and where they're coming from in order to optimize the situation that you're in. I'm a very good leader. I'm a very good listener. I'd like to believe I will be a really good leader, but I listen. I make connections as I hear people speak, so I can connect the dots behind the scenes, and I can understand how we need to get from point A to point B. And so maybe that's a strategic component, right? And so I can see that pretty quickly. And so then it just becomes a matter of, all right, now how do I build the path, embrace the suck and build the path from where we are today to where it is that we need to be. So listening, connecting dots, asking questions, and I do believe that the leadership skills that I have are a strength. I do lead with empathy. I do seek to bring out the best in others and choose to believe the optimistic side of the equation. So those are what I would say are my strengths. And I know where you're going next, but I'll leave it to you.
One of those themes that you mentioned that from your childhood, which was empathy, which is awesome. And I don't know that, and again, I haven't done research or study on this, it would be fascinating. So what percentage of people are empathetic? 2, what percentage of people that have empathy developed it from childhood or developed it later in life? But that was really fascinating that you developed that kind of early on in life, the empathy piece of your strengths there. And then the other thing too, that's really awesome, I feel like as a leader is, and I'm going to use a different word, but to describe what you were saying, if I heard you correctly, is you're curious. It sounds like you are intellectually and even, I would say, maybe potentially relationally curious. So when you have a scenario, rather than immediately go into guns blazing or judgment, or it's like, hey, let me be curious about this, and okay, let me seek to understand what was going on. Is that right?
Absolutely. I think that's bang on. And, it's interesting because if you can indulge me for just one second, I'm a huge Ted Lasso fan. And he has this, there's this one clip that has always stuck with me. And he said, yes, he's a fictional character. I realize this, but, he says, be curious, not judgmental. And that was just, that kind of hit the core of me. Yes, it is a, sitcom and all that sort of stuff. But I think that's so critically important, because when things don't sound right, you can jump to the blame. You can jump to the, why are you such a bonehead, right? Or you could say, that's interesting. Tell me more about that. What brought you to that decision? What did you see that said that you should do that, right? Because maybe you just don't have the full grasp of the situation, of the context. And I do think that has been core to who I am. I've always sought to understand where people are coming from. You can give people a lot of things. You can train them up. You can make sure that they have as much, competency for the task that they need to do as possible. You can expose them to new and different things that expand their horizons. But the one thing you cannot give people is motivation. You cannot give people drive, desire, or want to. They have to have that themselves. And I do believe that it is inherent in all of us, but it requires empathy of the leader to unlock it. It requires the leader taking such an interest in who you are and how you tick and why you think the way that you do, to then be able to frame the situation that you're in a way that unlocks the best potential. And so I've related that way throughout my entire life, trying to understand through other people's eyes, trying to understand what they're going through. You talk about you're a serial pleaser. But one of the things that I like to take pain off of people. I like to take stress off of people. I can't always do it, unfortunately, but it's you have to understand what's causing it before you can seek to address it.
Creating the right leadership environment and culture that brings the best out of your leaders is a tremendous quality trait and responsibility of the leader. And that sounds like you do that amazingly well. How did you develop your curiosity?
I don't know that I have a good answer for that, Noble. How did I develop my curiosity? I don't know. I think I've just been curious my whole life. Like you see people who are, I refer to it as often wrong, never in doubt, right? And so they'll speak in absolutes, right? They don't, God forbid someone know they don't have the answer to something, right? Maybe they're missing a vulnerability because they think that it is dangerous in their position to not appear like they have it all together, right? I've always approached it a little bit more like Tom Hanks in the room in the movie Big, where he's playing with the building and he was like, I don't get it. I don't get it. It's a building. Why is it fun? So I just, I'll ask the question to understand the background and why things are the way that they are. I think it's one of the reasons why engineering, although I cursed my high school every day of my 4-year experience at West Point, the engineering component really driving you to get to the root cause of things and make sure that you're understanding and addressing root cause versus symptoms, that really played well into just sort of how I'm wired. How I developed the curiosity, I don't know. I wish I haven't delved into it that deeply, Noble, but I'm going to consider that now. You gave me food for thought.
Awesome. So yeah. And if I could be a part of that too, that would give me another excuse to stay connected with you.
Fantastic.
A selfish reason there. What has been one of your biggest challenges that you've had to overcome or work through personally as a leader?
I would say, when you get into leadership positions, there's no loss of difficult situations, right? But if I think thematically of the things that I really have to work on as I'm going through them, I know what I'm going to use the wrong word, so forgive me, but triggers. I know what causes an emotional response in me. And, I've done the coaching. I do the meditation, and I love this Healthy Minds app. I kind of, listen to that. And so I can know and sense and feel when a reaction is coming on, right? With an exception. I mean, I can feel it coming on, but I'm not as good about really compartmentalizing it. And it's when I know that someone is being dishonest with me, because I have infinite patience for people who are learning. I have infinite patience for people who maybe don't understand the situation or have a lot of questions, and I'll spend as much time. I do believe it takes zero talent to be honest, right? And so we all have the ability to be honest. And when I feel like someone is choosing to be dishonest, I struggle to have the same emotional control and patience, and realizing in time that can come from all directions. That can come from people that you are charged to lead. It can come from your peers. And unfortunately, sometimes it might come from people above you, right? And so that has been one that I've really had to work on, Noble. And so I'll always think about, okay, why would this person, like, what is the rationale? Why could they possibly be, because you've been there, right? Somebody has said something to you. Maybe it's just your child and it's innocent, but whatever. It, you can feel it. And you're like, I and they know that they're telling me a lie right now. Right. And so I do struggle with that. And that is something that I have to work on. And I have not mastered it yet.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you again for that vulnerability. Yeah, that's great. There's another thing I want to jump on. How do you lead up?
How do I lead up? Meaning, how do I lead the people that are above me?
Yeah. How do you, so I do executive coaching, and there are a number of my corporate clients, there are some of my corporate clients that there is a challenge in or with someone in senior leadership. And sometimes I'm working with that leader also. Sometimes I don't have the opportunity to work with that senior leader that is having some challenges. And I'm working with that, say senior VP and not that C-level. And that senior VP is having some challenges with the C-level, someone in the C-level. How do you manage those relationships that are above you?
Yeah, it's a great question, Noble. Thank you for further explaining where you were going with that. What you see is what you get, right? With me, and I am the same with my team as I am with people above me. And so I do think that it all begins with really effective communication, with shared context, with making sure, okay, here's how I see the situation. Is this how you see the situation? Here's what I think the problems are. Is that what you think the problems are, right? Coming back again and again to communicate what you see and where you're going, right? Call it check and adjust, right? Here's what I see. Here's where I'm going. Are we good? No? Okay. How about this? Right? So I don't think any effective relationship, regardless where it is in the organization, above, beside, or below, is achieved without constant and effective communication. And it also needs to be a situation where you're comfortable getting real. And so pushing the envelope even with those above you so that they know where you're coming from, right? To say, if I can be really direct here for 1 second, here's what I see. Am I seeing the right thing? Right. And so you give them, again, it goes back to the curiosity and asking the questions, but it has to be constant communication. It has to be very frequent. It can't be somewhat infrequent. Once a month, like get together one-on-one, because so much work occurs in the space in between that you can do and go pretty far and maybe on the wrong path from their point of view. And by the time you get redirected, you're awfully spiteful because you're just thinking about all of that work that you did. And here's what I understood you to say. And actually, that's not what you were saying at all. So just constant communication.
It's the airplane that is only on course like 1% of the time. The rest of the time it's making those minor. Yeah, that's great.
Exactly.
That's great. How do you deal with low EQ leaders?
Would it be inappropriate to say I drink a lot? I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
I'm sure you'll probably edit that part out. But patience, I think it goes back to the same three things that I told you, working on myself from an EQ perspective, right? It is awareness, it is patience, it is discipline. There are times when I actually feel bad for those low EQ leaders, right? And so depending on who they are and the strength of our relationship, I might give them the feedback, right? I think you might have come across this way. I don't think that's the way that you meant to, but, because again, awareness is one of those three key pillars, and they simply may be unaware of what their impact is on others. And maybe nobody has been brave enough or maybe cared enough to give them that particular feedback. So I think the awareness piece for them is one. I learn for myself what it looks like in the moment. And it's very instructive. Like, okay, I'm never going to do that, right? So my son was saying, "Oh, I'm not learning." He's sophomore in college. He was like, "Mom, I'm not going to learn anything from this professor." I'm like, "Sure you will." No, I'm not going to learn. Yes, you will. Well, he's horrible. He's mean. He's da da da. I'm like, "Of course you are. This is a life lesson." Well, what can I possibly learn, Mom? I'm like, "What you're never going to do
right? How you are never going to behave, how your actions land on others. It's a life lesson more than your course, right? And so I learned the impact that low EQ has on the environment, on the team, on the situation, and I just try to have patience, and again, communication.
Yeah, that's awesome. What has it been like for you as a woman, to travel so, like, I've interviewed a lot of women, very successful women on the podcast, a lot, CEOs and big executives and stuff. And I'm thinking of a couple right now, and women in corporate America, I mean, this is not rocket science here, have a different experience than men in corporate America. What has that experience been like for you? And yeah, what's it been like for you? How have you navigated, that journey, that path?
For sure. Thank you for asking, Noble. I can only speak from my own lived experience, right? And I would never try to project that on all women in sort of leadership positions. I can tell you that I have been very determined to never be a victim. I will never be a victim because I'm a woman in corporate America. I'll take every situation for what it is and strive to do my best. No blame, no woe is me, right? It is what it is. I think I've been very fortunate to be a woman in corporate America. I mean, it has played well into who I am in terms of, choosing a difficult route, and this chip on my shoulder that I've had from a young age to prove and do and be more than others may have thought that I have been capable, and maybe that I myself have thought that I have been capable of. There have been times when I have felt my gender. Most of the time, I would say I've been in, pretty supportive environments. I would say that the likability factor for women in executive positions tends to be somewhat lower than those for men. And there was a point in my career, and it stuck with me. It's been hard to kind of let it go. There was a point in my career where I was trying to overcompensate for that, right? Like, hey, I'm not a scary person. I'm not, and so it caused me to apologize for a lot of things. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't, just to be overly deferential and that has taken me a long time to shake. My husband will tell you now, he'll be like, stop apologizing already. Right. And so I think that's an impact that has been on me personally, just being aware of that likability factor and that relational piece. But I've also grown up in a situation where all of my closest friends, I have a really close girlfriend in high school, and then most of all my other friends were male. Of course, the academy, surrounded by a lot of really supportive, men there. It's fantastic. I did have an English professor who pulled me aside, female, civilian, asked me why I was there because women weren't supposed to be there. I'm like, oh, well, yeah, I really just need to go use the ladies' room. Would that be all right? So, always just, remove myself from the situation, so to speak, right? But have had very, very supportive male relationships, and, probably the biggest supporter of them all being my husband now, Mike Bernstein, class of 95. I don't know if I'm rambling right now, if I'm answering your question, Noble, but I do know that we need more women in leadership, and not because, we need more women. We need more diversity in general in leadership, because the more diverse the thought patterns, the more diverse the approaches, the more well-rounded our corporate and private institutions are going to be, right? And so I think it doesn't just happen, though. It takes concerted effort. So you have to create the space, and you have to actually spend the time to go find qualified women and minorities of all types to bring into an organization to pay it forward, to provide that, kind of hand up to get people where they need to go, just for the overall good of the organization. I'm rambling, so I'm going to stop, but hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, no, that was great. That was great. I think part of the other reason that I asked the question is, I work with both men and women, and what I have noticed is that and this is just my anecdotal. So I don't, again, I'm not a behavioral psychologist from Harvard, and I'm not a ninja PhD and all that kind of stuff. But just in my personal practice, if you will, a number of the men that I work with, and again, this is a generalization, so there are exceptions, but a number of the men I work with lack self-awareness. And there are also some women that I work with that also lack some self-awareness. For me, as I feel that the majority of the women that I work with are more self-aware than the men that I have worked with. Again, that's just my little perspective. And, kind of going back to that whole, how do you work with low EQ leaders? And just in my own family, how about that? My wife, right, has had to live with and be married to an emotional 5-year-old for most of our marriage, right? And take the emotional 5-year-old Noble into the workplace. For men or women, right? Would not be fun to work with someone like me. So I think that, so that's one dynamic. The other dynamic is I love working with both men and women. I love the dynamic that men bring to the table, and I equally love the dynamic that women bring. And it's such a powerful team and construct when you can bring diversity to the workplace like that. And like you mentioned too, culturally, my brother-in-law is from Ghana. One of my closest friends is from the Ivory Coast. I mean, heck, I was raised speaking Spanish, look like a big giant white guy, but I can habla, right? And all those different cultures, right, bring different perspectives and angles and ways to look at the Rubik's Cube and different ways to solve problems. And anyway, so it's awesome. I love it. That was great.
Well, when you're in the majority, you seldom ever have to think about anything outside of your own sphere. Do you know what I'm saying? So if you've grown up where 90% of the people around you are all of a certain appearance, gender, whatever the case might be, you don't necessarily develop that same, I wonder what they think about this or what they, so you don't, so I think in some cases, maybe you have to work even harder, right, than a minority, be it a gender minority, a racial ethnic minority, would need to work in order to be able to empathize on one stretch or another.
Yeah, that's great. And so here's a quick teeny story. When I was in the infantry, now this is many, many moons ago, right back in the pterodactyl days when I was in the infantry, and it was a 600-man organization. There were no women anywhere. Like, you would almost stop anywhere on Ardennes, which is a street on Fort Bragg in the 82nd Airborne Division, and all these infantry units were all together, right? So you're really surrounded by, call it 2,000 or 3,000 men. Like, if you saw a woman, like, anywhere, it would always like stop and like, what is that? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it was like, whoa, oh, okay, I guess there's like, and because you're 24/7, you are immersed in literally surrounded by men. And then it gets even better, right, in the infantry in terms of programming was, so I was a brigade air for part of my time in the 82nd, and we would have all these other, the brigade commander was there, and all these other slice elements, support elements is what infantry guys would call them, right? Those are the nice names we would call them, right? And I remember, the brigade commander was like, okay, where's my infantry guys at? And then, as an air, I was connected to the Raven, the regimental aviation officer, who brought all the aviation assets to the table, to the battlefield. And I'm like, hey, sir, the Raven's got some really good thoughts in terms of how we can use Apaches, how we can use the Blackhawks, the Chinooks and stuff. And he just, the brigade commander just looked at this Raven, this first lieutenant aviation guy, and just like rolled his eyes. He's like, I want to talk to the infantry guys. I'm like, hey, sir, I understand Apaches have, significant resources and firepower. Gibbons, I want to talk to the infantry guy. Right. And I was like, is he being racist? From an MLS standpoint, like, wow, like it was like if you were not wearing cross rifles, right, in the 82nd on the street, it was like you were a second-class citizen. And I'm like, wow, that is, that's no joke, right? And so anyway.
That was a bias all on its own, right? I mean, it's going back to what you were talking about a few minutes ago. I once interviewed for a public board position. Spoiler alert, didn't get it, but I interviewed for it, and one of the gentlemen who was interviewing me was actually their CHRO, their Chief Human Resources Officer for this publicly traded company, and he asked me. If I had kids. I thought that's an interesting thing. I didn't know HR people could ask that these days, but I was like, as a matter of fact, I have, 2 boys who are the center of my world, and, kind of talked about them. And he was like, well, so as a mom and as a woman with 2 kids, do you really have the time to be able to do this? And I just remember thinking, I'm sure he's interviewing men for this role too. And I wonder if he's asking them the same questions that he's asking me, right? Because there's just an assumption, right? And so there is sort of implicit bias that comes with people's own lived experiences, right? And I didn't villainize him for that, right? But I was just thought that was really curious. I talked about my own situation and why I felt okay with it. But I just, in that moment, I thought, wow, that does not seem like something you would have asked a man sitting here right now if he had the ability to be on a board because he had kids.
Right, sure. That stimulated another question here. How and when did you become comfortable in your own skin?
Ooh. Are we ever really comfortable in our own skin? I kid, but I'm trying to think of if there's a particular thing that I can point to, Noble. I'm trying to figure out if I have been uncomfortable in my skin. And the thing that is dawning on me is the times of discomfort have been when I've been exposed to things that I just wasn't used to growing up. So when I needed to be in a room full of, the top 1%, because we were trying to sell them business jets, I couldn't relate to some of their experiences, right? And I felt unworthy, right? And so there have been situations like that, but it's never changed who I am or how I interact or how I engage. I'm very comfortable in my own skin at this point in time, and I think it took a lot of rep at the executive ranks to feel comfortable in that environment because it's just not, again, I have this 17-year-old small town girl down deep inside who just still can't believe, the experiences that she's had. So
yeah,
I don't have an elegant answer for you on that one, Noble.
Yeah, no, that's great. What lessons have you and are you and your husband instilling into your children?
Be a leader. We tell them for the longest time, we would tell them when they leave, be a leader, be a good friend, be a good listener, help others. When we say be a leader, it's not like, hey, go be student body president, or they've never really approached those things. But it's when we say be a leader, it's take care of things, take care of people, right? Go the extra mile, try a bit harder. And I feel so blessed to have 2 amazing young men 20 and 16 at this point, both sophomores, one in college, one in high school. They're beautiful human beings that I don't deserve, but love them nonetheless, right? And so my husband has very much been the enforcer on these young gentlemen, being, quite strict on them, which has been great and has taught them a lot about the world and life. We take them with us when we go places. So my husband got inducted into the Army Sports Hall of Fame in 2019. And when we came back to West Point and all of, the friends flew in, they got to see the interactions and the engagement and understand like the level of camaraderie and the spirit and the brotherhood and sisterhood and right, all those sorts of things and why it's so important. And I'm rambling again. You're gonna have to cut me off.
No, that's great. That's great. What legacy do you want to leave?
A better anything than I found it. And the reason why I say anything is because it applies to all things, right? From my work, I want to leave a better company than I found. I want to leave people with more potential, more realized potential than what I found. I want, people with happier, more fulfilled lives than what I found. I want my kids to achieve more, be more than what I had. The legacy I want to leave is just better, right? And probably sounds like a bumper sticker, right? But it's just, I want people to feel better, do more, be part of something enduring, lasting, that can continue to be handed down. I just want people to feel good about themselves and know that I cared tremendously.
That's awesome. What is your personal leader development program?
Personal, you mean for myself?
For you, yeah.
So I still seek the help of executive coaches. I have one now who she was a CEO herself, and she is just and she's very real and direct, which is beautiful. And so I work with her, I read a lot. I mentioned the book earlier. I'm reading this book now that was introduced from a really close friend in class of 95, Jack Swift, and he handed it on to my husband, and now I'm reading it, and it is called Synchronicity. It's older, Joe Jaworski, and then there's a foreword written by Peter Seng. I hope I'm saying his name correctly. But it talks a lot about conversation and listening and being open to the pain and the triumph of leadership, of the experience of servant leadership, of the responsibility to create a better reality. And I remember reading that and I thought, well, that's fantastic, because that's not create a better vision. Like vision, yeah, that's important. But if you can't do a darn thing about it, does it really matter? Right. So it's not just about pie in the sky stuff, but to create a better reality. It takes no talent to tell the truth. It also takes no talent to be negative about everything, right? But if you can see a situation and you can envision a better future state, and then actually put the plans in place, get the people aligned and on board, like that is the guts of leadership. Like that's what's really fascinating to drive things forward. So I went off on a tangent again. Forgive me, Noble. But reading different perspectives, reading periodicals, reading, business news every day, right? Reading leadership books, and some of them you read and you're like, and then others are like, yeah, I'm really getting into that. That's pretty deep. The coach, and then just as in all things, you learn the most on OJT, right? They talk about training and classes and but actually putting what you're seeing and experiencing and feeling in your gut into practice, and without the fear of failure, knowing that you're gonna fail and doing it anyway, right? I think for me,
never stopping to push the envelope, putting it into practice, lots of reading, and then a coach along the way. That's been my own personal progress.
That's awesome. That's great. Love it. That's great. Yeah. I think that's huge. That's huge. And I think it's so important to continue to expand your own capacity as a leader so that you can, continue to add more value to your family, your organization, your, things you're part of, friends and, all those different things. And so that's awesome that you're still actively growing yourself. I met a 2IC of a $3 billion business division. He was in charge of, I think, 3,000 or 4,000 employees. And I asked him, on a 10-minute coffee break, "Hey, sir, what's your, how are you growing yourself?" He's like, "Oh man, no, I just don't have time to read. When I get home, I crack open the cold one." And I'm like, "Yeah, but what are some of your favorite books that you've read?" "Oh no, well, man, I don't have any time." "How about podcasts?" "Oh no, but you just don't understand. I'm so busy." And I thought, man, this is not a dude that I want to maybe be intentional about picking his brain. I mean, and clearly he had some skills, right? You don't make it to that level without having some sort of skill. So, I mean, not that I couldn't have learned something, but that it was very revealing to me, and that was kind of one of my first times where I'm like, oh, I don't need to put these guys on a pedestal. I used to put those folks on a pedestal, the big ballers, the big Roxannes, right, on a pedestal, and then realize like, oh, okay, well, they're humans too, and they, put their pants on the same way I do, and have areas to work on just like me, so that was kind of eye-opening. So that's great to hear that you're still very much on your growth trend. I'm not surprised at all, but that's neat. It's neat to hear that. Any final?
Well, Noble, I think that is important. And I mean to interrupt you. I think that's so important for the people who are, listening to your podcast or watching this on your YouTube channel, because I imagine you have people of all different sort of levels and all different industries and everything like that is just like you said, nobody comes out of the womb this like amazing leader if we're all honest with ourselves. Right. And so not having it all figured out is okay. But just having the awareness that I don't have it all figured out, but here's what I'm doing about it. And we are human beings, which means we're constantly evolving and changing if we allow ourselves to get to that better sort of optimized place, right? I would be very hesitant of leaders who don't see addressing their own abilities and actions and perspectives as part of moving their organization forward. So if it's pure focus only on what's happening in the organization, like that's not enough. That's not enough. It's a system of systems. We're all human beings, and that development and optimization goes all the way to the top. And so for those who say they don't have time, that would be a little bit of a red flag for me. You, as in all things that you truly care about, you make the time.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Yes. No. Yes. 100%. Love that. That's great. Any final resources, tips, or suggestions for junior leaders that are wanting to grow their capacity, their influence, their leadership?
Yeah. So the truly aspirational people that are just, going to go get it, going to go kill it, right? Don't lose that fire, but also have some patience with yourself, right? This is what I wish I could tell my younger self, is to have a little bit of patience with yourself. I've been so driven. Someone once said, you just should all over yourself, right? Should, as an SHOULD, right? You should all over yourself because you say, well, I should have done this. I should have done that. I should have. It's just focus on what you're trying to achieve right now, right? And then one step at a time. You're going to make mistakes. That's where all the learning comes in, and it doesn't make you weak. it in fact will wind up making you stronger. So, certainly don't should all over yourself. Be a problem solver, and always know what you're solving for. Emotion can take over if you don't know what you're solving for and can think through things, calmly and rationally. So that's, in a nutshell, that's what I would say, Noble.
Just got hit with some emotion, Roxanne. I'm very humbled and grateful to know you, and for you that you would take this time and share your insights and wisdom from way high up on the food chain that can really add value to other folks that are listening and watching. And I'm not surprised at all why you've had the success that you've had. Now getting a chance to really have some great quality connection time with you. You are truly an empathetic leader who cares about being the best version of yourself, and who cares about everyone around you and helping them become the best versions of themselves. And so, yeah, not surprised at all. And thank you so much, Roxanne. It's I am better for having spent this time with you, and I'm thankful for that.
Well, Noble, I'm honored that you asked me to be part of this podcast, for sure. And for someone as eternally optimistic as you are, and you come across, and how you greet people, and how you've gotten the classmates together on calls just to talk to each other and understand, kind of where people have been and what they've been doing. Like, you are a connector. You are a connector in spirit, in intellect, and also from an EQ gangster perspective, right? So you're pushing and making every single one of us better. So it was a real honor for you to ask for me to join you on this. And so thank you for that. I appreciate it.